Moving on in section 10.5, now we're talking about order of operations or BEDMAS. And the rules haven't changed since we talked about this way back in chapter 1 and 4. We're still going to do the same order. So just as a bit of a reminder, let's write that down. And so it's going to be brackets, and then exponents, and then division and multiplication, left to right. And then addition and subtraction, left to right. Okay, and there's kind of one more nuance we're going to add to this B up here. But this is the same order. So we've got an example here. We've got brackets. So we start by dealing with those brackets. -9 plus 12 gives us the 3 that's shown down here. Then we're going to do the multiplication of 7 times 3 to get 21. In this next example, we've got a multiplication first and then a subtraction. So we're going to start with our multiplication right here. We're multiplying two negative numbers, so we get a positive number. And that becomes positive 56. Then we do our subtraction, which gives us the 60. Okay, let's try some. Now, this first one here, we've got -5 all squared. So remember, that's the same thing as -5 times -5. Because the -5 is in brackets, the entire -5, including the negative sign, is getting squared. So it's -5 times -5, and then we're going to have a -3. So there's no real brackets here. The brackets there are only there to indicate how to do the exponent. So we'll start with the E in BEDMAS and do this exponent, which gives us 25, positive 25. And then we can deal with that subtraction to get 22. Okay, contrast that to the next one here. So now we've got -5 squared, and then we've got a subtraction. So again, we're going to start with our exponent. This time, the exponent only applies to what's immediately left to it because there's no brackets. So that's going to be the same thing as 5 times itself once. So 5 times 5. And so we get -25 minus 3. And so your answer here would be -28. Okay, next one here. We have brackets. So we start with the brackets. And that gives us -9 plus 7. We take our bigger number and subtract the smaller. So 9 minus 7 gives us 2. And it's going to be negative because there's a negative sign on the bigger number. So we get 8 times -2, which gives us -16. Okay, next one. We don't have any real brackets here again. The brackets that are there just around one number are only there to indicate that we're doing multiplication. And so we're going to start with the multiplication in this case. -3 times -5 gives us positive 15. And then we're going to deal with that addition next to get 22. Okay, next one. Again, we don't have any real brackets, but we have an exponent there. -4 all squared. That means -4 times -4. So we're going to deal with that exponent first. And that gives us positive 16. And then we've got a subtraction here, positive 16 minus -4. And when you've got those two sticks, remember you can turn it into a positive, and so we get 16 plus 4, which is 20. Okay, and then we can contrast that with this next one. Here we've got -4 squared, but the negative sign is not included in the brackets. So that's the same as 4 times 4 with a negative out front. And so we get -16 plus 4. Well, here, let me take one more step. So we get -16 there. And then we can deal with that subtraction. We have two negatives in a row, so they become a positive. So we've got -16 plus 4, which gives us -12. Okay. So the nuance I was talking about with the B there, which means brackets, is that when you're dividing real numbers, you want to evaluate above and below the bar first. So you can think of that B up here as also standing for above and below the bar. Okay, so it's brackets, but it's also evaluating above and below the bar. In other words, before you do the division here, the divided by 3 that's indicated by this fraction, first you're going to evaluate above the bar here to get your positive 42. So you get positive 42 over 3, then you can do that division of 42 divided by 3 to get 14. Okay, if we had something more fancy down below, something more involved, maybe we had a +1 here, we would have dealt with that first before we went and did the division as well. So let's do some practice of that. So if we have -4 plus -8 on top, we're going to deal with that first to get -12 over 6. Then we can deal with the division of that fraction bar, which would give us -2 over 1, which is just the whole number. Well, not the whole number, the integer, -2. Okay, next one. We've got to think about BEDMAS on this one because we've got multiple operations in the numerator. We have a multiplication here of 2 times -6. There's kind of 2 ways to think about this, but let's think of this as 2 times -6. Let me try highlighter. Okay, so we're just going to deal with this part right now. Okay, and so we get 3 minus -12. Okay, we're again going to still continue to evaluate that numerator until we get just one number for it. So we've got 3 minus -12, which is the same as 3 plus 12, so 15 over -5, which gives us -3 over 1, or -3. Now, the other way you could have thought about this is, let me just write it again here. Oops. I guess this isn't quite as correct, but it does work if you want to think about it this way. You can think of this as -2 times -6, which gives you 12. No, you can't. No, don't do it that way. That doesn't make any sense. We're going to do it the way I said before. So you're going to do the multiplication first of the 2 times -6. Oh yeah, I see how my way would work, but it's not really mathematically correct. So don't do it that way. Do it the way I showed you before. Okay, next one. Again, we've got a bunch of operations here. What are we going to do first? Well, we've got 2 kind of sets of multiplication. We don't have any brackets. We don't have any exponents. So we're going to start with the multiplication, which would give us +8 minus +30. And that's divided by, well, on the bottom, we just have a multiplication. So that would be -44. So now we can deal with the subtraction on top, which would give us -22. And that's over -44. We have a negative divided by a negative, so those just cancel each other out. And here we could simplify because we can divide the top and bottom by 22, which would give us 1/2.